SCP. Secure, Contain, Protect. If you don't know what SCP is, brother, you're missing out. It's a website designed to look like official governmental documents, or rather, the official documents of the SCP organization. The SCP organization is a group that have come together to secure anomalous objects and phenomena. Anomalous meaning that which deviates from the standard. So for example, if you had a flying pig, that pig would be anomalous. Because of this, just about anything and everything has an opportunity to weave its way into the SCP universe. But the SCP organization has a very standardized and clinical way of inspecting and describing anomalous objects and phenomena. So for example, if they came across a leprechaun, they would describe it in the same way that a zoologist would describe a giraffe. And they also wouldn't call it a leprechaun or whatever its designated birth name is. They would call it by whatever number they assigned it, e.g. SCP-078. I discovered SCP when I was working as a janitor at Ivy Tech. The majority of my days there was spent listening to music and podcasts talking about the wonders of the world as I scrubbed the fecal matter off of the floors that the college students intentionally left for me. No, I'm not joking. That they really did do that. To my delight, one of the YouTube channels that I became a consistent listener of is The Vulgan, which, shout out to The Vulgan. It's a channel that essentially creates audio logs of SCPs with professional levels of voice acting. And he's also created the best introduction to SCP video that I've ever seen. So if you're not familiar with SCP and you're looking to get more acquainted, I cannot recommend his video and his channel highly enough. From Ferdinand the Cannibal to the Song of Genesis, from the Red Sea Object to God himself. SCP has a little something for everybody. The website is amazing and the audio logs are fantastic. But what about the video games? That's right, there have been fan games getting made since 2012. Now I have fond memories of a couple of them, but to be honest with you, that's more so because I would watch streamers play them. Well, I would watch Markiplier play them. But I never actually played them for myself. But that all changes today. I think it's about time we dove into the video games that put SCP on the map and made them their very own genre in gaming history. The first SCP game to ever come out was SCP-83. It's a relatively simple concept of an SCP, as most early ones were. It's essentially a never-ending stairway, or at least potentially never-ending. None of the D-Class that have gone down in it have actually reached the bottom. D-Class personnel are those who are used for testing SCPs by the organization. More often than not, they're prisoners who are either forced to do this or volunteer given the choice between this and a life sentence or the death penalty. Little do they know that becoming a D-Class is essentially the same thing as being given a death sentence. SCP-83 is a great read. The game might be a different story, however. I was trying to find the version I watched Markiplier play in the early 2010s. At first I thought it had just gotten graphical updates after all these years, but that's definitely not the case because the original had a large amount of floors, I think 100, and there was a character that honed in on you based on your behavior. That's where the challenge came from after the initial spook of a dark stairway. The version I played had 2 chapters separated by an elevator, which I don't recall SCP-83 having at all. Everything that happens is scripted to location, so the character that tries to get you is always in the same spot. In addition to that, the game is very buggy. It's a 15-minute game when it runs smoothly, but there are these heads that you need to place on altars, or whatever these are, to progress, but half the time the game won't let you pick them up, or it'll let you pick one up one time and then never again. And then there are even times when you can pick up the head, but the game won't let you put it down where it needs to go on the altar. I was so disappointed with the game that I actually asked for a refund on Steam, which I have never done before. This is the first time I've ever asked for a refund for on Steam. That's how disappointed I was with the game. Luckily, there's a modern remake of the game called SCP-83B. 83B is technically different from 83, but for gaming purposes, this functions as another version of 83. Unfortunately, this game ended up being pretty glitchy as well. Every time I tried to record, I had to hold down a mouse key to move the camera. Not the worst thing in the world, as you don't need to pick things up in this game from what I can tell, but I'm sorry to say that I didn't enjoy it much more than the first one. There were hallways where you had to choose between the left or right path, and both would end up killing me, giving me the impression that which one is the correct one is randomly selected each game session. In other words, this game is just a fancy digital representation of a coin toss, which I find to be rather boring. For that reason, I just can't recommend it. Honestly, just go watch The Vulgan instead. That's okay though, because the game I was really excited to play was SCP Containment Breach, in which you play as the D-Class personnel in a facility that just lost its power. All the SCPs are loose as a goose, and your goal is to get out of there alive. I wish I could say more about this, but I was never able to record the game for myself. At first I had trouble getting into even run. When I would try to start, it would say unable to create 3D scene, but as it turns out, the game just can't run at a high definition resolution. Once you turn the resolution down, the game works just fine, but it froze every time I tried to record it. And that's a shame, because this game has the coolest concept by far. It presents you with a hodgepodge of different SCPs that are not only unique in how you survive them, but they can actually be used with each other as a part of how you escape. It's very creative. It's unfortunate that I can't go in depth on the game in this video, but I still recommend it, because it is playable and it is genuinely fun. At this point I was starting to get desperate. I looked on Steam for any SCP game I could find. There were interesting looking multiplayer and VR experiences, but I don't have a VR headset or people to play SCP with at the moment. Then I came across it, SCP-22, a free single player experience. It's a very short game, so I won't give anything away, but essentially it's an SCP that's an escape room. You just have to figure out how to get out. So it would seem that for the most part, my experience with the SCP games has been fairly disappointing, but we're in luck, because there's one game left that seems to have potential. SCP Containment Breach Reborn is a fan remake currently in development. It doesn't have an official release date yet, but there's a demo and an option to let the developer know that you're interested in playing the game when they're ready to let more people play the beta or alpha or whatever you want to call this build of the game. Currently there's only 2 SCPs from what I've seen in the Foundation. First is SCP-173, otherwise known as the Sculpture. It's basically an angel from Doctor Who. It only moves when there's no direct line of sight on it, and when that happens it moves very quickly, aiming to snap your neck. Just as in the original game, it has a blinking mechanic. You blink naturally over time, or you can choose to blink using the spacebar. I personally found the best method to be blinking right when you open a door. The other SCP is SCP-1074. Essentially, once you start looking at it, you can't stop looking at it and you die. The current layout of the facility is relatively boring. It's mostly halls that look the same. You go through a door and then there's either 1 or 2 doors on the other side. Rinse and repeat. So at this point you can't do all the fun stuff you could do in the original, but I will say that the game feels very nice to control and looks a lot smoother than the original. So once more SCPs and an improved layout get implemented, I imagine that this is going to turn into quite the fun experience. Once it's complete, I'd love to do a full video on the game. In the meantime, I'd say it's worth playing the original. Even though I wasn't able to record footage of it, I can still tell you that it's worth a casual playthrough or two, as rough around the edges as it is. It's unfortunate that I wasn't able to look at more games today, but I don't feel like spending any more money on Steam than I already have for this video, so... It's an anomalous gato!